Hello everyone, BB here, and I am back with another grid journaling video. These are some of my favorite videos to post here on YouTube. If you are new to grid journaling or if you've never heard of it before, it's when you are in your journal and you draw different grids and boxes and then work within those boxes on the journal page. This is fun for so many different reasons. Some people like to work on it just a box at a time. For me, the joy comes from working on all of the boxes on your page at once, and they're all so different from each other, yet cohesive, almost like a collection. So a couple different ways that you could use grid journaling for your own art practice is as a warm-up exercise. Before starting on something bigger or a complete project, work on a grid journal spread. Maybe you've been out of the art game for a little while and you want to ease back into it before committing to something larger. Grid journaling is also perfect for that. Maybe you're trying out a new color scheme or some new supplies that you have, and you're not really sure how they work yet. That would be a perfect way to use a grid journaling spread. Now, grid journaling is super simple. All you need is some paper. It doesn't have to be inside of a journal or notebook, and start drawing out some grids. You can download my free template down in the description below, and it's just a little PDF guide that you can use to help draw your grids in your boxes. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to keep watching and comment down below what your favorite part of the video was, and let's get started. I've decided that my first step is going to be some pencil scribbles to get rid of that fear of the white page. My journal is about 8.5 by 11 inches, which is the size of regular copy paper here in the US. I do have the link for a journal that is very similar down in the description below, as well as all the other supplies that I use. If I know where they're from, I do try to tag them down below for you with a link directly to that supply. So I'm starting out here with a little bit of collage. This is just a security envelope that I got in the mail, and I liked the black and white, so I saved it. I'm tearing it up into smaller pieces and using my glue stick to get those to stay down on the page. Nothing too special here. Sometimes these first steps, it's important to not think too hard. I do have an idea for the color scheme I'm going to go with, but other than that, I don't think too far in advance. The more we start overthinking the decisions that we're going to make, the more complicated it can get. And if you're like me, you're going to get stuck in your own head a bit here. I like to just start maybe with the first thing I know I'm going to do, which is those pencil scribbles, and then just see where it leads. The point of doing that in the initial first step is it really helps me to loosen up and not overthink things so much. I absolutely love to collage with black and white because it's going to go with any colors that I decide later on. I'm going to start adding in some paint here, and I mixed up a couple different colors. I think it is more of a neon pink along with some white gesso just to tone down that color a little bit, so it's not so neon. Also, a lot of neon paints are more translucent, and adding in that white gesso did help it to become a little bit more opaque. It's still a pretty light color, so it's not going to be completely opaque, and that's totally fine with me. I'm going around and making some random marks with my paintbrush. No water is being added at this point, just the paint on the paintbrush. I don't need to do the exact same shape or the exact color in every single square. I do want to change it up. I want these squares to be quite cohesive with each other overall, like a collection, but they do not need to match exactly. Now with my colored pencils, I'm just making some scribbles with a couple different colors and shades of the same color. I think it's important when you're using color to come in with multiple different supplies that are in that same color range when you're working in more of a limited color palette like this. Just because it's the same color the supply will show up differently depending on what medium you're using. So a color pencil is actually going to look a lot different than paint would look. And it's going to build in some texture and dimension by using multiple supplies in those same colorations. I'm being really loose with my movements and my pencil scribbles and my color pencil scribbles, not being too particular at all. Next up, I'm going to come in with another color, more of a yellow orange type of color, and add in the paint where I think it's needed on each of the little grids. I like that this is not too opaque of a color. You're starting to be able to see some of the marks that I've already done previously underneath it, whether it's the color pencil or just the regular pencil scribbles. You can also see some of that collage. So my goal is not to completely cover what I've done before, but you're going to start seeing these different layers and all of that added interest. Now with my Stabilo All, which is a water-soluble pencil, I'm coming in and adding some scribbles. So I love water-soluble supplies. They're probably one of my go-tos and favorites. You can now, with a wet paintbrush, drag some of that pigment around. The really fun part also is even in the squares that you didn't directly doodle in, you can bring that pigment into those squares as well. I like to call it almost a ghost impression that you're creating with the pigment in other squares. Now I'm coming in with a darker pink, kind of magenta color, and that's going to keep adding dimension with the pink that was already there in the first place. Building in different shades of that same coloration will really help. Instead of keeping it all within that medium range, we're bringing in some darks and we'll bring in some lights as well. Kind of building on to the areas that I did before. Instead of having things off on an island of their own, when I come back in and add different elements, I'm kind of adding on to the same basic area that I started with. Continuing to build that color. I really liked that yellow orange that I put in before, but I felt like it needed to be even bolder and in a few more areas, but I didn't necessarily want it to be just the paint. And so I'm coming in with a Neo color too, and I'm really pressing down on that to get a nice amount of color down on the page. Putting it in and under certain areas so that it stands out a lot more. Now, I'm not going to come in with a wet paintbrush on this one, although that's the way I use it a lot of times, but I want that color to stay really nice and bold. I'm also coming in with some pink neo color as well, just building up all of that dimension and all of those layers. Now with my pink neon Sharpie, I'm going to add in some more marks. Now it's not going to mark over everything very well because of the different substrates that I've been using. Um, but I like the inconsistencies of the marks that it is leaving. Sometimes it shows up well, and sometimes it kind of putters out because of the waxy nature of the different supplies that I'm using. And if everything is not completely dry, it's not going to mark the same also. But I like that it's not giving a very consistent mark and it's more irregular and unpredictable. Now with some white gesso, I'm gonna come back in over some of those areas. And you'll notice that it mixes with some of the pigment that's already on the page. It's not necessarily mixing with the paint from before because that's dry. It's mixing with the neo color that I put down. And I really like the look of that. It's giving me really nice light colors that are a nice juxtaposition with the dark colors that I just added. I think it's a really fun way to make really nice, soft looking colors and pigments. I went ahead and dried what was there, and now I'm coming back in with more white gesso, and this time it's going to show up a little bit more pure white because I'm adding it on top of the things that I've already done before. So yes, it will still mix with some of that pigment that was not activated the first time around, but I'll also get some more of that true white color coming through because I dried what was there before. Sometimes with white, you do need to come in with multiple layers, drying between each layer in order for it to cover something that you've already done. Now I'm going to add in some art marks with some black pen and go over some of that paint that I've done. I'm kind of pulling out some of the shapes that I did there and doing a pinstripe within that predetermined organic shape. I really like the look of this, and I think it makes your eye see more of those shapes. This pen works really well over dried acrylic paint, but sometimes you do need to kind of scribble it off in between times if you press too hard down or if that paint's not completely dry. Next up, I'm going to come in with my white correction pen and add some little highlights with some little art marks, some little dots. I love the texture that this correction pen leaves. It's a raised surface and it dries really quickly and marks over pretty much anything. To to just give another outline around my boxes just to reinforce them a little bit, make them look a little bit more bold. I did go over the lines in some areas, and I'm totally fine with that messy look. In fact, I think it's kind of fun to have it almost escape from the outsides a little bit, some of those art marks that you make. It makes it look like it's going outside of the canvas. I'm okay with a messy scribble type of line around the outside, and so I'm not using anything to mark along this. I'm just freehanding it. I did use a template when I first drew those rectangles, so now I'm not too worried about it looking a little bit more sketchy. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think down in the comments below. And if you have tried art journaling and grid journaling, what is your favorite part? I'd love to know. As always, I leave those supplies down in the description, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. See you all next time. Thank you guys so much for watching this grid journaling tutorial.